All right, good morning. It's Thursday, and we're giving the toter win to the Babylon Bee. Guys, I hope you've seen this article already, but this is going to be fun.
Win. 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 Win.
This guy so much sack. He protect, he attack. This why no more homo erotic rocket ranches. Got it? Got it. Oh jeez. So much wang.
Well, that didn't work at all the way it's supposed to. Sorry about that little stutter, little technical issue, but whatever. Toter win. Okay. I'm gonna start by just giving you a little bit of background knowledge. I suspect that most of my audience knows what CNN is because we have our WTF CNN beat that we do every now and then. And of course, if you've ever been in an airport or a dentist office, you've been force-fed fake news propaganda from CNN specifically. It's what they do. And as the saying goes, if you're good at lying, why be honest? Nobody says that, but they should, because apparently there's money in lying to America. Hence CNN. And the Babylon Bee, again, most of my, Total Win remix. That's right, Steve. So, the Babylon Bee is satire. Let's be very clear on that. The Babylon Bee is, in fact, satire. It's the point to the bee is that it's fake news for the sake of being funny. Now, in theory, and in fairness, only in theory, it used to be the case that there was satire and there was the news. Satire was fake, and it was fake to make a joke. And often the joke is made not just for the purposes of being amusing. Steve, CNN hasn't practiced journalism ever. It's not back in the 80s. There has not been a point in history when journalism was not a propaganda profession. One could argue that currently journalism is beginning to become the thing that people always thought journalism was supposed to be. But we can go down that rabbit hole another time. So what happened was the Babylon Bee ran this article, and I was not going to do this show. I was not. I was absolutely not going to bother talking about this incident. But then there was another development that I just saw this morning. And I wasn't going to talk about it because Tim Pool already did what I thought was a longer show than this particular content deserved, but that's okay. It was still solid. But here's what happened. The Babylon Bee ran this headline: CNN criticizes Israel Arab leaders for shaking hands in the Middle East, in the middle of a pandemic. Trump, Middle East leaders ignore social distancing. Right? This is a joke. Okay, this is the Babylon Bee, a satire site, making fun of CNN a propaganda site. CNN and other Washington, D.C., CNN and other media outlets attacked President Trump and foreign leaders this week after footage emerged of Israeli and Arab leaders standing closer than 6 feet apart and embracing in a peace accord, clearly violating COVID social distancing protocol. Right, and this is on the premise that if Donald Trump cured cancer, CNN would attack him for putting oncologists out of work. Oh, but look at all the jobs we're going to lose in the healthcare section. Look at all the jobs we're going to lose in researching cancer cure. All that. Now, I don't know if I necessarily buy into the idea that we have a cure for cancer and it's just more profitable to keep on treating it and researching it. But I have good reason for that. Not just discounting bizarre conspiracy theories. There's a little more to it than that, but we're doing this. This is simply beyond the pale, said CNN chief White House correspondent Jim Acosta. No one here is social distancing. No one's wearing a mask. People are smiling and sitting next to each other. It's a bloodbath here. It's almost as if President Trump is trying to kill these Middle Eastern leaders. This man truly has no shame. Just when you thought this president couldn't stoop any lower, he defies expectations and goes lower. This is truly a day of national embarrassment for this country. Now, I have to pause for a moment here and remind you, Jim Acosta, I know, it's tricky because it's so easy to believe. One of the problems with the Babylon Bee is they have committed satire so aggressively over time. Their satire gets more and more ridiculous. Not because the Bee is running out of creativity to produce satire, but because reality keeps getting more ridiculously close to the satire that they produce, especially when they're producing criticism of corrupt organizations like CNN, where the corruption has gotten so blatant that they just basically state it now. Right? The CNN and the whole mainstream cartel media apparatus, they're failing miserably to just keep the mask on. It's slipping, guys. It's hard to ignore the blatant corruption and the blatant incestuous nature of the relationship between the cartel press and the Democrat National Committee. So this is a moment where we just need to take a pause so I can remind you, he didn't say this. I know it's really easy to picture Jim Acosta accusing Donald Trump and saying that peace in the Middle East is a bloodbath. There will be an article. There will absolutely be an article from one of the cartel media organizations arguing that a peace deal in the Middle East will lead to genocide. And they're going to accuse that genocide of being conducted against Muslims in some way. That's how they will frame it. It will be an absolute blatant lie, but the cartel media, I'm not saying it'll be CNN. I don't know which one's going to do it yet, but it will happen. So, many critics are questioning Trump's wisdom in trying to negotiate peace in the Middle East during a global pandemic, since there are probably way more productive things he could be doing, like defunding the police or imposing a national mask mandate. Others are worried that peace in the Middle East could be some sort of white supremacist dog whistle. Republicans, on the other hand, are pouncing on the critics, most likely because they're soulless jerks who want people to die. No one really knows what the peace deal means, except that it may make Trump look good, which of course means it's bad. That article, or that sentence right there, no one really knows what the peace deal means, except that it may make Trump look good, which of course means it's bad. That's barely a satirical statement. Nancy Pelosi has in fact gone on record and said out loud, the only reason Trump is working on peace in the Middle East is to distract you from his handling of the coronavirus. Okay, without naming names, I have a buddy whose nutbag wife. So I'm just going to keep on talking. Hopefully it all connects back up to you. It says there's 5 people watching. And it looks like you just spent a little time watching me type. So there's the green light again. We're back on point. Unfortunately, the ceremony erupted into chaos and peace talks collapsed after an argument arose over the correct pronunciation of GIF. I don't care how the founder said to pronounce it. He's a technology nerd. The linguist says that is pronounced GIF. So, here's where it gets really funny. Oh, and then it gets even better. CNN this is CNN. CNN! This isn't the B. This isn't a joke here. This is for real. Mideast diplomatic breakthroughs celebrated before a large packed crowd. That's right. I'm not making a joke here. And unfortunately, it looks like CNN was too lazy to even write an article to go with that headline. They just go straight into the ads. So there's not an article. There's just the headline and the video spot. So we're gonna watch just a little bit of this video spot. Conflict of interest.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Welcome to
Breaking
I'm
News.
Jake Tapper, and we begin today with the 2020 lead. President Trump this afternoon celebrating a foreign policy triumph, leading a White House ceremony with a historic signing of agreements between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain, normalizing Israel's diplomatic relations with those 2 Arab nations. We'll have much more coverage of this agreement, brokered with the help of the Trump administration in moments. But the ceremony also highlights our health lead today and the major health crisis that the United States continues to suffer through, with empirical evidence of massive government failure, what philanthropist Bill Gates just called, quote, a mismanaged situation every step of the way. It's shocking. It's unbelievable. The fact that we would be among the worst in the...
Okay. I think I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Jake, I have this question for you and everyone else who says the president has mismanaged the virus. But how? Point to it. Make a claim. They continue to make the claim that he's mismanaged the virus. How? Because that's all they said. That's the whole claim. Well, he's mismanaged our reaction. Our reaction's been bad. We're the worst. Okay, not the worst in the world. Empirically, statistically, false statement. Well, he's mismanaged it. How? Show me the thing he did wrong. The most reasonable and legitimate criticism that you can offer to the management of the virus outbreak has been that Trump allowed the expenditure of far too much tax money by establishing emergency hospitals that went unused. The most correct and reasonable criticism you can offer of the response is that we overreacted dramatically and as a result wasted billions of taxpayer dollars on hospital emergency establishments which went not underutilized, completely unused. So let's get back to the funny. I just played for it. There it was. CNN comes out and criticizes Donald Trump for conducting peace talks in the middle of the pandemic. And Tim Pool did the check on it. The articles came out about the the Babylon Bee published their article about 4 hours before CNN published this one. So it's likely the case that the two statements were being produced nigh simultaneously and did not influence one another. And it is almost certainly the case that the CNN article did not have the opportunity to influence or even inspire the Bee article. So the Babylon Bee hit it first. And as a joke, and now you have CNN just coming out and straight up saying, CNN is running. And like I said, I wasn't going to cover this because it seems like a show covering this topic should be as simple as CNN and the Babylon Bee ran the same headline unironically. But when I got up this morning, I was actually going to talk about this case where this judge has just pointed out that no, all your mask mandates, all your lockdowns, all your stay-at-home orders are in fact unconstitutional. That's a thing that just happened, and I was going to call that a total win. But I know sometimes I can drone and get boring on the law stuff, and then as I was getting ready to do the show this morning, I stumbled across this. Struggling CNN just starts stealing headlines from the Babylon Bee, and boom, there it is, the two headlines side by side, the Babylon Bee on my left, your right, the CNN headline on my right, your left. And this is an article from the Bee. And that headline is technically satire? Is how we're going to roll with this? So, Atlanta, Georgia. After months of continually trying and failing to produce better fake news than the Babylon Bee, CNN has assigned a team of people to monitor the Babylon Bee's website daily to determine how they should cover the news for that day. Okay, that phrase, fake news. Fake news always meant satire until Donald Trump got elected. And if you remember correctly, what happened is the Democrats, the left, tried to use the idea of fake news to smear Donald Trump. They started calling things like independent journalists on YouTube. They started calling that fake news because it wasn't the big establishment media. And Trump brilliantly jumped on it and started using the term fake news to refer to CNN and the whole cartel media establishment. And it stuck. That by itself was a total win. He took a propaganda narrative of the enemy and completely, and without a great deal of effort, flipped it on them. And now you won't hear anybody, you won't even hear his detractors use fake news in the same way, referring to the independent journalists. They use it to refer to specific articles now. That they were accusing guys like me of being fake news, which I don't pretend to be a journalist over here. I'm a commentator and an analyst, and most of the guys that they were accusing of being fake news, that's exactly what they are. They're commentators, they're analysts, that kind of stuff. Over here, we don't do conspiracy theory. We do conspiracy analysis, which is kind of a joke, and it's funny if you think about it for a second, but it's also points on true. I'm not going to discuss bizarre, outlandish, unsupportable conspiracy theories, but where there's evident, like, Russiagate, Ukrainegate, but where there's legitimate evidence that a conspiracy was engaged in, Obamagate, where there's actual audio recordings and video to show legitimate, substantial proof that X, Y, and Z occurred, like Joe Biden is the one that suggested that the Hatch Act be used to try and ruin General Flynn, explicitly for the purposes of complicating and retarding the transition to power of Donald Trump after the legitimate election, then yeah, we're going to talk about that. And we have. So, after months of continually trying and failing to produce better fake news than the Babylon Bee, CNN has assigned a team of people to monitor the Babylon Bee's website daily to determine how they should cover the news for that day. With Babylon Bee headlines coming true on CNN more and more frequently than ever, CNN content is starting to look stale since readers are only seeing the news they saw in the Bee 2 weeks ago. And this is not the first time that CNN has put out a legitimate news report that just looked exactly like something that the Babylon Bee posted recently. But this one was, I mean, just so close. It was choice. To remedy this, CNN has decided to stay ahead of the news by simply copying Bee headlines and pasting them on their site. It's like the Babylon Bee is in our heads, said CNN President Jeff Zucker. How do they know exactly how we think and exactly how we will cover the news since we're not predictable in any way whatsoever? It's a mystery as to how the Bee is accomplishing this. I think they may have struck a deal with an evil sorcerer to read our minds. CNN anchors like Chris Cuomo, Don Lemon, and Brian Stelter have laid off all their writers and researchers. Instead, they will just read Bee headlines with quivering lips and grave expressions on their faces. "This isn't funny," said Brian Stelter through tears while wrapped in a knit blanket and sipping a pumpkin spice latte with extra whipped cream. "I don't even know what's real anymore. Who am I anyway? What am I even doing anymore? I need a good cry." Media reached out to the Babylon Bee editors for response, but could not reach them since they were in an important meeting with an evil sorcerer. I just... Victory! Winning hugely. I mean, the cartel media just can't even keep up with their own propaganda anymore. This... and what's especially funny is on Tuesday I was having lunch with a very old good friend, and we'll say a new friend. Don't want to out anybody and get them ruined by their constituents, but we had a bit of conversation about black propaganda, and guys, reality is catching up to the ridiculity of the Bee with such alacrity that one must be concerned that the Bee will soon transform not from satire into propaganda, but rather from satire into black propaganda, which is where you put out propaganda that is incorrectly positive to your own cause in order to make the target believe that what they're looking at is propaganda from their own cause. It's kind of hard to explain. I'll have to chew on this sentence to correctly explain black propaganda to you. But basically, it's almost like you're using sarcasm to conduct psych warfare. It's incredibly effective. Because rather than make people have positive feelings about the subject for which you want them to have positive feelings, you use black propaganda either to damage the morale of the enemy or to galvanize the targeting hatred of your own side against the enemy by essentially lampooning the enemy and making them... CNN is basically hard propaganda. But there are sites out there that pose as conservative. You can think as Stormfront, or not Stormfront, the Daily Stormer, right? And the so-called Nazi type groups that put out articles and claim to be right wing, when I mean they're National Socialists, they're socialists. You don't get much more left than socialist without going, full Bernie Sanders. You can think of those as black propaganda. That's a pretty good way to put it. So, okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there. That's actually more show and commentary than I thought I'd be able to squeeze out of these 3 articles. But just, I mean, solid gold. I was a few minutes late starting the show this morning because I was still trying to get myself under control. I was laughing so hard at this article. So, good talking to you. Love you guys. Be safe out there. We'll see you tomorrow for Firearms Friday. Might have a little surprise in store. We'll see. Nothing's for certain yet, but we'll see.